Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Before I get into this video, I'd like to ask you all to please leave a like on my video and leave a comment as well if possible. Now, before I get into the video, I'm also going to say that I'm not going to cover any more on the problems with the test server. There are too many things coming up and way too much for me to even think of considering to cover. It needs to be taken by a whole lot of people all at once. I know that I'm fighting for their test server to basically be redone and for all of those things to be undone, but I'm not going to push any further on it. It's been comments all night, and I've been fighting with everybody who comments negatively over there, trying to get them on board with the idea of saving the game. Now, I'm going straight back into my interdiction sphere video. So basically, here's going to be the next one. Interdiction spheres, how to play the fastest damaging strategies. Now, fast damaging strategies don't mean that they're going to get you quick kills. They mean that you're going to get players to panic and attempt to attack the wrong ship first. So which ships are the best for this purpose? Now I'm going straight into the battle cruiser class, and you're going to realize exactly what I'm aiming for the moment I open this ship. And it is the Harbinger prototype. Now, why am I attempting to use the Harbinger prototype as the damaging class ship in this whole formation with the prototypes? Well, number one, when it comes to running interdiction spheres, the first thing you want a player to do is feel very panicked. You want him to activate as many systems as possible, as quickly as possible, while taking the most amount of damage. And the first thing that you have to pull off any ship is the shield. Now, you do get the rare few players who run the resistance by adding in that 20% boost to the EM resistance, but even with that, their lasers still do a phenomenal amount of damage, ripping away most of the shield. Now, when it comes to this, the first thing that you should know is I have done a build on the Harbinger. Now, unlike the recommended fittings for a Harbinger, my recommendation on fittings this ship is going to be a little bit different based on where it's going to be. Now, number one, remember you do have the addition of a drone. Now, your drone in the situation is going to either be explosive or kinetic. It's going to be one of the two because you are focusing so heavily on pulling off that shield. Now, this is only for the sake of this one weapon, and let's go through the next part of it. Your weapon slots on the ship are going to be 6 lasers. Now, I do make a mistake between pulse and beam if I'm not looking at them directly. I will go through it as I go through the build itself and what you're going to need to put on the ship. But you are going to equip 6 lasers. Now, the whole idea is to have maximum range within your interdiction sphere so that you're capable of hitting a target. Now, when it comes to your mid slot, just like any other battle cruiser, you're going to be running the same type of setup. However, since you're planning to play within the interdiction sphere, it's going to be Webifier, and one of the other fittings for the third. Running a disruptor doesn't really help you within an interdiction sphere, so having a disruptor on would be your regular PvP play, but changing it up to a neutralizer might help you out a little bit in terms of gameplay. Now, moving on to your low slot. This is where people won't agree with what I'm talking about in terms of the play. Remember, the first ship that I said you should have in this entire formation is a Moa Guardian. So, Moa Guardian to hold the front, and then I'm talking about having a Harbinger in there. Now, a Harbinger isn't going to destroy the ship the fastest, it's going to make a player panic the fastest. And a panic player will use up way too much power on their ship way too quickly. So, activating every single system they can, trying the most ridiculous tactic, and attacking the big ship first. That is the one thing that you will see a player do the moment they are cornered and they feel trapped. Now, obviously, hitting the big ship is the best way to get out of major problem if you have the firepower to retaliate. So, let's say, for example, this was against a Cyclone. The Harbinger does have range on its weapon so that it can hit a Cyclone at quite a distance. And it does have a lot of disadvantages in terms of speed because it is slower than a Cyclone. However, it does have another advantage over the Cyclone, that is the fact that it can rip away a shield. And even if you are using your MOA Guardian to regenerate the shield on this, this is how the low slot will go. Number one, you are going to put an afterburner. Number two, you are going to be putting on, is it a tracking computer or heatsink? I'm not exactly sure which one would work. Then the third option in this entire lineup for your running of this vessel is going to be a shield invulnerability field. Now this is where everybody is going to be like, why are you building an armor tank this way? You are using a MOA Guardian to give yourself better shield. The last thing you want to do is transfer too much of damage to the MOA. And you're going to put a shield repair. Now the shield repair isn't really important. The likeliness of you actually activating the shield repair is very low. Now for the remaining slot, you can either put in a tracking computer, if I'm correct, tracking computer stacked with the lasers, or you can put in a shield extender. But regardless of which one you choose, it's either to save your MOA from taking some damage, or it's for the purpose of increasing your range and damage that you're dealing. So, for this purpose, in this entire situation, imagine that you are facing a big ship like a cyclone. Now, the cyclone does use missiles, so that is the only thing you have to worry about facing. Now, with everything that comes with the ship is the laser optimal range increasing by 25% and 25% accuracy fall off. Now, that means that you have a greater range to fire on, and it has one command burst module. Now I have no idea what command burst modules are exactly, but when they do come out in the game, I must probably will understand it quite quickly. Now next on this entire list is an 8% increase to the damage of lasers for every level of upgrade bonus. So medium lasers, if you doing the upgrade, you get the bonus of 8% for the laser damage for each level. So a maximum of 40%. While your medium laser capacitor need is reduced by 50%, making it more efficient for fire. It also takes a negative 5% inertia modifier. Now, what this does is it reduces the inertia of the ship, allowing you to turn faster and giving you a little bit um, more adjustment speed in terms of combat. So reduced inertial modifier is going to help you in terms of being able to move in combat. Now going into the actual stats, it doesn't have as much tankiness as the other ship, and it doesn't have as large of a shield as the other ships in its class. However, it does have sufficient shield for its very purpose. It does have a nice recharge rate on its capacitor, but since it does use lasers, increasing that recharge rate and increasing the capacitor figure is much more useful to you. So we will be going over what you're going to put in the low slot. In your combat slots on this, you're going to be increasing laser damage, you're going to be increasing laser range, and you're going to be reducing laser capacitor need. Now you could reduce the laser capacitor need, or you could reduce the activation time on the laser. Either one will help you do more damage quicker. So those are your options on your combat rigs. Now for your engineering rigs, this ship is really slow. However, in the effect of a warp bubble, micro warp drives don't play an effect. So your velocity on your ship is very important in catching an opponent. So what you are going to do is add in the thruster to this ship. Then your next two are going to be your capacitor multiplier by 20% and your increase in recharge percentage. Now I did forget the figure that you get off the level 2, but everything here should be level 2 in terms of fittings. If you aren't running level 2 fittings, you aren't going to have the best advantage with the ship in combat. Now let's get into actually building up everything that's needed on this vessel. Now I didn't go through this, sorry, that's the wrong one. I didn't go through the stats one by one, but I am just going to go over them in a general purpose right now. If you look at it, flight velocity is 181 meters per second, the standard 2.7 AU per second on the warp speed, 1044 megawatt power output, and the standard 4200 gigajoule capacitor. Now, I'm not really going to worry about the power output because I know that the ship can sustain its lasers with all of them in place, no matter what is input. Okay, getting on to the C-type mediums. Right, number one, you've got 6 of these, and once you add them into your ship, it will take you up to somewhere near 700 total capacity. No, actually, it's just over 700 capacity, about 720 capacity, around about that figure. It is a little bit lower, it's closer to 700, but that's around the figure that it is. Now, I'm not going through specific calculations today, I'm just a little bit tired from a very long night. So, anyway, this is exactly where you're going to be. Okay, wrong missile type. So, it isn't pulse, it is beam lasers. Uh, and the power requirement is the same on the lasers. No, it's not the same. It's 140, so that will take you up to about 840 megawatts used from the grid. That leaves just about 160 in the standard grid. You don't even need 160 to put everything on this vessel. With your engineering at level 1, it's increasing it by 25%. That's another 250, so you basically have 400 capacitor left. Your mid slots are going to generally cost you 1 megawatt a piece. If you do decide to run a NOS, it's going to be 83 megawatts, and you basically just remove 83 at 85 at the max, leaving you with around 300 megawatts left on the system. Your low slots are going to be shield booster. That's going to be 55 megawatts. I'm pretty sure that I'm correct on that figure. Yeah, 55 megawatts on the shield booster, shield extender. This is a little bit heavy in terms of power usage, so let's open it. 75 megawatts. You still have 180, if I'm correct, in terms of megawatts. The shield hardener is 1 megawatt, and it's going to be the red one. Now, even though this is an armor tank and that's what suits it the best, putting this on is purely because you're running with the MOA in that formation. If you aren't running with the MOA in the formation, change it up to armor hardener, armor repair, and plate. That's going to change up the whole way in which this is affecting you. Now, moving on, down below is the afterburner. Now, as I said, you could swap out the extender for another fitting, and that is what I'm going to do just now in terms of looking at what I can put on in terms of extra damage. Now, this is going to consume 83 megawatts, leaving you with less than 100 megawatts left on your total system. It's just less than 100 megawatts. First thing that you're going to need is a heatsink. If I'm correct, this increases the fire time. Yeah, it takes 7 megawatts. It's not even impacting you that heavy. Now, here is where the option on changing things up. Remember your 75 from your Patriot Shield. Sorry, wrong system. Right. You can take off the shield extender and you can run this in its place. Eagle tracking is going to increase your accuracy, range, and your tracking speed. This is going to help you do more damage at a larger range, and this is one of the best ways to rip shields off ships. Now, here are the reasons why I've chosen this ship over a cyclone for this formation. Number one, you want to get the player in a panic. Now, in a panic, the player is going to think of changing directions midway through progressing through the sphere. And even though the player most likely could escape you in a straight line, by turning, he is going to reduce the chance of him actually escaping. Now, with all of this is going to be him trying to retaliate in combat, not being able to take out the MOA. He might decide to attack the interdiction ship if he can, but if you are applying this type of pressure to him, he is going to think of taking you on first because of how badly you are damaging him. Now, even with the best of ships, if you are running shield repair in that MOA Guardian Sphere, you are really going to have a nice tough ship. So if you are running Harbinger, and this is just a 3-man formation, it's Harbinger, MOA, and Interdiction Sphere, Interdiction ship, sorry, you're really going to have a really tough fight. And this is going to give you the chance to take in a lot of damage and deal a lot of damage quite quickly. Now, with all of this being said, You might be wondering if there are any drawbacks to this entire formation. Well, yes, there are, because you could always use this to combat within an interdiction sphere. If someone is running the interdiction sphere against you and you know that they are camping with an interdiction sphere, you can run a 3-man team or a 2-man team with the Moa and a Harbinger jumping into the sphere to take on the enemy. Now, with all of this being the case, you're going to be able to fight them at the disadvantage where they won't be able to warp away. So the attack is going to run both for you and them. Not being able to use micro warp drives will hurt the opponents if they have a different format. If they aren't running the Moa Guardian, they don't have as much shield. And if they are running the Moa Guardian, you're going to impact the shield really, really quickly and pull it down extremely fast with lasers. Lasers are going to be more effective than the cyclone damage I talked about previously, but the thing is, you're not going to destroy the ship faster overall. Your laser is going to pull the shield down really, really fast, and then your damage is going to equal out to the resistance you would have had if you had run a cyclone against the shield. Your resistance is going to fall off against the armor, and that is where everything changes, and that is where the slower progress goes through. And once the armor is down, the progress is all standard against the final layer, which is the hull. So with all of this being said, the only reason for the Harbinger is to induce a panic into your enemy. It is a form of strategic gameplay. Now, this is something that you can do in PvP, whether a person attacks you and holds you, or whether a person attacks you and is just hoping for the best outcome with the small fleet, hoping for inactive players. You can actually use this to turn the entire situation on its head. Taking on these ships means you can actually take on a nice large chunk of reward from the entire encounter. So, moving on to the next thing when it comes to this whole situation, we'll be thinking of any other countermeasures that you might need to take. Now, the Harbinger is a lot slower than other ships, so its ability to speed tank is really reduced. That means that your Moa Guardian might not have to actually throw in much of a thruster bonus to be able to keep up with the vessel. So you might not need to use your thruster on your afterburner on the Moa. That will reduce the entire reduction of damage overall in that entire motion. So you do have the chance of taking heavy damage. That is the reason for all of those fittings for improving damage reduction. Now, I already did know that I was going to include the Harbinger in this because the Harbinger does have this offensive gameplay style. Now, in place of a Harbinger, there are other systems that could be used. You could use something like a Phantasm and fill in both roles at one time. That means you have the role of the shield tank and you have the role of the lasers to rip away shields, and everything is combined into one extremely lethal attacking vessel. The firepower of the Phantasm is equal to the Harbinger. The defensive capability of the Phantasm is equal to the Moa. That makes it a way better ship than the Harbinger overall, and it is also something that could replace both of these vessels in that formation. Now, if you are running the Phantasm, it's obviously going to have a similar build. It's not going to have the exact same build because your weapons are different and everything on the ship can be rebalanced to give you a better play. Now, the standard Phantasm build will work except for the fact that you're going to change your one mid slot to the armor link and everything else can stay the same on the Phantasm. The Phantasm is a beautiful ship when it comes to these things. Running blockades with the Phantasm is one of the best things to do because you can go in with the Warp Disruptor or two Warp Disruptors and take out an entire gate camp. And this includes gate camps with big battle cruisers in their entire rank because that is how powerful a Phantasm is. They take a very small amount of damage. Being able to damage it to about 40% of its shield will be what you will be able to do in the time that it takes to reactivate the armor link one time. However, with all of this being said, this means a massive amount of cyclones versus the Phantasm. That is what you need to actually bring it down. However, if you are using Harbingers against the Phantasm, you can expect it to be ranging about 10 to 20% of its total shield before it reactivates the armor link, and once it activates all of its functions to regenerate the shield, you might not have that type of a go at it. Now, with all of this being said, there is something that I didn't include into the possibility of the Harbinger defense, and that is the activation of its low slots. If its low slots are activated in terms of invulnerability, um, shield extenders, and boosters, you are not going to get anywhere near the 40% mark. Even with Harbingers, you're most probably going to take out something like 20 or 30% of its shield, and that is only once the armor link goes down for a few seconds in its downtime between its reactivation. But the amount of damage it will be able to pump out against you will be in the range of about 60 to 70% of a Harbinger's shield, or 60 to 70% of a Cyclone's shield. That's how powerful the Phantasm is. So if you replaced the ship with the Phantasm, I'm not going to give the build for it. You just have to figure out exactly what you're going to put in it. So basically, your long range lasers to give you the range in combat, the warp disruptors so that you can trap an enemy, which is standard running on the Phantasm. The Phantasm doesn't have to worry about the interdiction sphere. You're going to run Afterburner instead of a micro warp drive. Because of the introduction of interdiction spheres, it's going to be more economic for your ship anyway. The fittings are going to be the standard. It's not going to be the standard assault build. It's going to be two assault figures with the 25% boost to the shield booster. So 25% extra on shield boosting that gives it an extra tankiness that makes it almost impossible to beat the Phantasm, even with that large fleet. It'll take you about 40 seconds to beat the Phantasm if it doesn't have um, a shield armor link on it, which gives it 59% defensive play, plus the 35% resistance from an invulnerability field makes it almost impossible to beat it. It's the overwhelming fire that is actually taking away some of its shield, and at that point you still don't have that overwhelming power over it. You only have small minuscule figures like 5s or 6s in terms of your damage, and that is how it will range if everything is active. And if it isn't all active, you'll be doing damage in the range of 60s to 70s with your missiles against the stationary Phantasm. If the Phantasm is moving, you will do even less damage to it, and that is the overall effectiveness of speed tanking with that ship. So that is one of the best ships to run a blockade. Whether you introduce interdiction spheres or not, the Phantasm will be able to take out those types of play. And using a Phantasm in your lineup will make it even more difficult and more tough for anybody to touch the interdiction ship, because the interdiction ship may be squashy like a frigate, but you definitely will be able to take on a much better fight with the Phantasm. However, the build expense goes up drastically to the same amount as having two ships in the sphere from the start. Now, that is going to be it for this entire video. Thank you all for watching. Have a good day.